We all have a love and hate relationship with taxes. We know its role for the society as a whole and also its role for the economy. But as our income rises, income bracket rises, our discomfort with the payment of taxes increases. Insurance traditionally has been known as the medium to save taxes. Now, where does health insurance fit in? Today we have with us CEO of Apolllo Munich Health Insurance, Mr. Antony Jacob, who will give us an insight on the sector, his perspective on how will GST impact the sector. So welcome to Rubaru with the TIOL Tube. It's a pleasure having you. So my first question to you is, what is the present size of the industry? And when we talk about policy reforms, which allows higher stake of foreign players in the sector, where do you see the industry heading after the FDI limit was hiked from 26 to present 49%?
Yes. Firstly, thank you for inviting me for this show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and to your audience. Now, in terms of where we are on the sector, I'm going to speak specifically on the health insurance sector. Health insurance really started kicking off somewhere in the early 2000s when it opened up for private sector competition. From a small base of about 600-700 crores today, at the end of 31st March 2017, happy to say we will be somewhere in the region close to 30,000 crores. So not a bad progress in the last 15 years or so. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it, which is what I look at, is there's lots more to happen on the health insurance sector. The sector is still very underpenetrated. Less than 100 million of Indians actually have private health insurance.
Budget is almost knocking at the door. What are your expectations from the budget?
Budget sometimes has some yeses and nos, and sometimes we don't know what's covered, what's not covered. But I'm hoping a couple of things are mentioned or at least taken, or the intention to move forward is spelled out. One is, I talked about the RSBY scheme earlier. That's come to a sort of a bit of a halt in many states because there was an announcement of a universal health insurance scheme which is going to be kicked off by the Modi government. I'm hoping there will be clarity on how that will work, and the how part I'm hoping will also include some tax exemptions, because having a health insurance scheme for the masses and then a tax on that service, I think may not be the right thing to start off with. So my expectation is some clarity in terms of what this health insurance scheme, how will it work, and probably exemption on this for from a tax angle.
Right.
Secondly is there is this minimum MAT which is applicable for corporates. There has been precedents with MAT being excluded for life insurance companies. So on the one hand, if we say insurance penetration must increase, I do think we deserve a few more encouraging areas. Maybe we could get exempted from MAT for a few
most
more.
Most of them are eligible for it.
Yes, get exempted from MAT, or there should be some time period where it could be we could be exempted from it. And my third big one would be, can there be some special exemption for health insurance products?
Right. Okay. So, having said that, when 26 December 2014, the Insurance Amendment Act was passed, and I remember Mr. Jaitley said that once this FDI limit is hiked, around $6 to 8 million would be pumped into this industry, in the sector, but not really much has come into the sector per se. I was talking to a person from IRDA. So where do you think what is lacking, and we could rather see some more reforms on the government side, and what is there that then industry need to tap on now going forward?
Right. So you did ask me about the 26 to 49 and what my sense was. I think that was a very good move, a timely move. Now, has things changed dramatically between the day the parliament approved and now? I didn't expect it to change dramatically, but I did expect change, and I have seen change.
Right.
Best of my knowledge, about 10,000 crores plus has come in from FDI money, from foreign shareholders into the insurance market.
So standalone, I believe there are 6 standalone.
Standalone, there are 6.
At present.
There are 6, out of which one, this Apolllo Munich and Max Pupa and TTK are the ones which have foreign partners. I believe in all of these 3, the 26 has been stepped up to 49. Then we do have Relicare and Star, which is 100% Indian owned. I don't know what their thoughts are on of bringing in foreign partners, but I'm assuming that the 26 to 49 has certainly provoked interest in many other players around the world. Right. So I think you're going to see more investment, but it will take time, which is what I had thought initially. The reason being that the Indian health insurance industry is growing. There is still a lot of maturity to happen in terms of the offtake as well as in terms of pricing. And unless those shape up, and I expect it to shape up in the next few years. So I think the number of players would increase as well as foreign equity into health insurance basis 2649 would see an increase.
So I'll come to that later, but if I may ask you to share what are the recent regulatory changes that have taken place in the sector?
Yes. So IRDA has been a regulator as well as has been also playing the role of developing the sector. Right. One of the biggest issues which the health insurance industry had is raising the awareness and also bringing out a cost-effective distribution system in place. An average health insurance policy ticket would cost you about 5,000 rupees, right? And for an agent, 15% of that is 750 rupees, and that's not too much. So there is an issue of what is cost-effective distribution, right? Mm-hmm. Very, very rightly, the regulator opened up the banking channels to health insurance. It wasn't available 3 years ago. So today we could use public sector banks, private sector banks, foreign multinational banks to access the length and breadth of the country. And I think that's a big change. Mm-hmm. In terms of other changes, the regulator has allowed portability in the last few years, which means if somebody is not happy with the existing health insurance provider, you have a choice of shifting over to somebody else who you believe is better.
Okay, the interportability.
Yes. Okay. In terms of looking at a variety of new products, innovation, the regulator, I must say, has been very encouraging. We ourselves have brought some innovation into the market, which has since been copied by many others. But I think it's been very progressive in terms of what the regulations are doing in terms of developing the market. And I think it's left to the industry players to actually go and suggest to the regulator what we believe our current customers and potential customers want. So in a way, I think what needs to be done is also the responsibility of players like us to keep educating the regulator, saying this is what the market is demanding. For example, now I am in the process of convincing the regulator and the finance ministry, saying the need of the hour is for players like us to come up with outpatient insurance products. So far it has been only in-hospitalization products. So health insurance covered a customer if you went into hospital, right, but didn't cover really your laboratory tests. If it was if you just had a flu or a fever or something and you didn't get admitted, right, your pharmaceutical purchases or the consulting fees of doctors, those outpatient, and that's a big chunk of everybody's purse.
Right. Okay, so that is in the process.
Yes.
Right. So let me compare with the other developed countries. Like for example, Britain has largely tax-based financing system for insurance sector. Then Germany, where it mandates mandatory health insurance. Japan, which mandates their people to enroll themselves with a particular insurance company. India there is a different ballgame altogether. So what do you think is the main issue? Is it pricing or product, and why is there so much under-penetration?
See, under-penetration today is because of several reasons, right? I think the starting point is we should all realize that India is a young country. Average age is 35 or whatever, right? So when you're at that age, there's a general belief that you're fine, you're healthy. You haven't really needed or you haven't really tasted difficulties in healthcare. But the world is changing, lifestyles are changing, age is also moving up, elderly population percentage is also increasing. The buying process also is not the easiest. Now, in a subject like health insurance, there's a lot of data to be captured and there's an underwriting process before you can give a price and a product. So, it's not just like going into Amazon and just picking up a mobile phone and having it delivered. Health insurance, you really need to understand what are you buying, what does it cover, and more importantly, what it doesn't cover. So, the whole buying process is also not similar to buying a commodity or buying something else. So, all of these have led to a slow progress in the past, but I'm bullish and I think the world is changing and I think our industry is changing and I think people's mindset is changing. So, I really think that you're really going to see some accelerated growth of about 30% per annum, 25 to 30% per annum year on year for the next maybe 5, 10, 15 years.
Okay, so there are two parts to my question. When you said that tier 2, tier 3 cities, so how is the rural sector focus increasing? Because that is also a major chunk wherein that needs to be tapped. And secondly, when you said that, of course, rightly said that it is not just a product which you go and buy online or rather offline, go to a brick and mortar store and just pick up the product. There are a lot of procedures involved. And having seen the different products, there are more exclusions than inclusions. For example, this is not covered, this is XYZ is not covered. So out of the pocket expenditure for a particular person is on a higher side. So what is being done to tackle that?
So several parts to your question. One is on the rural side, right? There was a scheme called the RSBY scheme, which was monitored by the Ministry of Labour, which actually catered to the people below the poverty line, and it was open to companies like us to participate. And I must say, we're very proud to participate, and we actually insured people below the poverty line in Meghalaya, Nagaland, parts of Bihar, parts of Maharashtra, right? Okay. So we've been there, we've done several millions of people, and many other companies have also done the same thing. So that's a great step to actually bringing awareness at that level. Now, we have to assume that people below the poverty line, with India growing, they will go above the line. So, once they've tasted insurance below the poverty line, which is largely funded by the government, they start beginning to understand there is a financing mechanism. So, as their life progresses, as their income, they will also want private insurance. So, as far as the masses are concerned, that below the poverty line of 300-400 million people, they've tasted something which is being given by the government. So that's a great step in terms of educating the masses. In terms of the exclusions, which you rightly said, in our health insurance policy, there will be conditions. I must say there is and there will always be conditions. That is the nature of the product.
Right, because it is basically a promise to deliver at a future date.
Yes. And depending on the condition of the person, there will be less conditions or more. Depending on the health condition of the person, there will be less conditions or more conditions or no conditions, right? So
how does this TPA, the third party administration, how does that work?
So companies like us, and we believe it's the right approach, we have a combination of our own in-house claims processing team, which is equivalent to a TPA, and also we engage third parties. The own in-house is used exclusively for all our retail customers, and we believe that's the way to handle it. So, if you are a retail customer, an individual who bought with his or her own money from us, then you would go through our own internal claims processing team, which is an equivalent to a TPA, but in-house. But if you are an employee of a company who insured their employees with us, then that company and Apollo Munich would agree whether you want an in-house processing team or do you prefer a third party.
Right. So, sir, how do these tax professionals and CAs specifically, do they have a role in helping the health insurance sector? And if yes, how?
Yes, I do think that tax consultants, chartered accountants and professionals consulting for individuals, and today I think government is encouraging more and more people to file tax returns, right? So you will at some point of time go to an expert. I do think that they all have a role to play in terms of penetration, because when I look at our own database of how many of our existing customers have actually used Section 80D, which is already available to you and me today, right?
Yeah.
Not all people have used Section 80D. Even in our own customer base, it's only about 50 to 60% who have used. So which means that even for our existing customers, there is scope to increase their coverage
in terms of tax
and get subsidized by Section 80D.
Yes.
So that's for existing customers, and I think chartered accountants need to encourage their clients to look at, firstly, are they using Section 80D? Government is giving you a freebie there. Government is giving you a tax deduction.
Absolutely.
So they should actually be encouraging people who have not utilized it and say, government is paying 30% of your tax, of your health insurance premium by a deduction here, right?
Yes.
So for those who have not, and for those who have already health insurance, look at whether have they optimized it, because you may have bought it and used it when the limit was 15,000 rupees. Today the limit has gone to 25,000, and if you do your parents, it's up to 50,000, right? So there could be a gap of 10 to 35,000 which is available for that individual, which the accountant will know or the tax professional will know.
Right. And now, how do you see GST impacting the sector?
I'm glad that you raised that, because I am a bit concerned about what those rates will be. I do agree that personally I don't think it should be zero, because I think GST is a very good concept. In a country like this, there is a lot to gain if we went down the GST route. So there's no dispute that is it the right thing or wrong thing. 100% agree it's right. But given the fact that health insurance is getting to be a must-have product, given the fact that it is low penetration today, less than 100 million, we all are saying, the government is saying, regulator is saying, players are saying, third-party people are saying, we must grow this 100 million to maybe 1 billion of people insured at least and get close to 100%. Then you need to encourage people to buy this product. So on top of this, if you put another 18% as GST, now first is raising the awareness, trying to make that first sale, and then you load the premium with another 18%, which is where I hear it's moving towards, I think may not be the right step. Okay, I'm saying GST must, but can you not look at keeping it at the lowest level for a period of time so that it doesn't hurt the pockets of potential buyers, and maybe when India gets a certain penetration and above, move it into the next higher slab and take it at some point of time, take it to the higher slab. But don't start GST for health, things like health insurance at the highest slab. My submission is keep it at the minimum slab. I think 4% is being spoken about, and I think that might be a good way to start off with till such time there is good penetration.
Right. So coming to my second last question, I would like to have your perspective on the reinsurance sector. What do you think will be some leg up and post the policy reforms, and how is it going to, where is it going to head?
Yes. So the opening up of the reinsurance sector happened up not very long ago. We've had licenses issued just a few weeks ago. People are just getting their act together to get into the renewal season, which is February, March and April. And in market expense, I think it is in India's interest to also diversify the concentration of risk from India into overseas markets. And that's a good way, because if something big were to hit India, you don't want companies in India to be hurt. So having these branches makes it easier for Indian insurance companies to diversify by negotiating with the branches of the foreign companies. And of course, National Re, which is a very solid player, GIC is a very solid player. So it's a step in the right direction, and my expectation is in the months and years to come, you're probably going to see more applications for reinsurance branches in India.
Right. Right. So thank you so much for sparing your precious time for TIOL Tube. Thank you.